Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode. At Storytelling Unboxed, we are committed to transform lives through narrative art. So this is a space where stories open minds and narratives transform lives. I'm Dr. S.M.A. Moin, reader in storytelling and brand communication at Queen Mary University of London. And for today, I'm your host for this Intellectual Adda. Today, I'm thrilled to have a conversation with a truly special guest. She is remarkable in many ways. Yes, I'm going to use Seth Godin's purple cow analogy to introduce her. She's an academic with many years of experience of revolutionizing teaching and learning. She's a prolific author who not only teaches the knowledge of others, but also brings her own books into the classroom and connect with the students using both cognition and emotion through storytelling and co-create knowledge with them. She is a renowned researcher. Her journal publications, available on Google Scholars, are the testimonies of this statement. She is a professor of digital economy and culture who is not only enriching the field, but also helping to set the agenda for the future. And last but not the least, she is the Deputy Dean at the School of Business and Management at Queen Mary University of London. But for this space, for Storytelling Unboxed, none of this matter. She holds a different or deeper identity. She is one of the visionaries behind Storytelling Unboxed, an initiative born a couple of years before to give voice, agency, and identity to our students, the leaders of tomorrow. Let me tell you the story briefly. The journey began in a lecture theater where Dr. Moin meets Professor Ibrahim, both standing together on the podium, teaching brand management to a cohort of 340 students. Somewhere along the way, while walking quietly beside the graveyard at Queen Mary University of London, a profound question emerged between us. Are we simply producing graduates, or are we nurturing leaders who can change the world? That question stayed with us. And from that moment, our purpose became clear. Education alone is not enough. Students need voice. They need identity. They need the courage to tell their stories. And so Storytelling Unboxed was born. Professor Ibrahim, welcome to this Intellectual Adda.
Thank you, Dr. Moin. That was such a prolific introduction. I'm not sure I'm worthy of all that high praise, but particularly the purple cow analogies. But thank you. Great to speak with you and connect with you again. Well, some time ago, wasn't it, that we were teaching together a module?
Yes. It was in 2022, January, end of January. We took the stage or the podium together, and that was really fascinating.
It was a really testing time because we had just come out of COVID and virtual teaching, was it not?
Yes, you are absolutely right.
And we were back in the classrooms, and I remember the sort of motivation to start Storytelling Unboxed came because the whole of the world had gone through some sort of trauma.
Yes.
People had different experiences, collective and individual. And we were trying to process the world for a number of years through the screen. Coming out of the COVID, we both felt that the classroom dynamic had changed. We had forgotten how to be with each other in a way that was, comfortable. We were looking at different ways and methodologies to unleash voice in the classroom. And I suppose that's the joint purpose of Storytelling Unboxed coming in, when we wanted to unleash voice from the margins in the classroom, from those who don't hear their own voices, particularly when we went into virtual teaching and there was a lot of lurking in the dark screens. That was a real challenge, wasn't it?
That's right. That's right, Professor Ibrahim. And I truly enjoyed having the opportunity to be able to teach alongside you. And I learned a lot. But today I have a number of questions for you because I reflect myself. I think that why not? It is a wonderful opportunity that I also share how you see the world and how you see this initiative and share your wisdom and knowledge with the audience. So my first question, so it lies at the heart of our journey. So in a world shaped by disruption, loss, and rapid change, why do you believe storytelling has become essential, not just for learning, but for hearing, for healing, leadership, and collective renewal?
I think storytelling has got a spectrum in terms of its historical trajectory, from the oral traditions of mythology, the ways in which we imagine, origin stories, the ways in which a nation imagines itself, to the ways in people tell their stories. It's part of a social history, like I said, both collective and individual. And I wanted to unleash that in the classroom because the classroom itself is a global platform for us. We get a lot of international students. We get students from really difficult backgrounds. And within the social strata of fragmentation and inequality, some voices get processed more than the others. Some histories get told a lot more and circulated than the others. And I wanted to see whether we could unleash voices differently through the narrative art, as you describe, from storytelling. And I remember the first session we did when we invited students coming from the lockdown to actually talk about their struggles. And I think I was blown away. I wonder whether you remember and recall that moment.
Yeah, I certainly remember that because that was extraordinary because we were just trying to come out from the screen into the world, and the way students were sharing their kind of feeling and emotion, and that was mesmerizing. Since you have talked about the voice, I think maybe I will ask a question about the power of voice. So when we speak of voice, we often think of words, sounds, or expression. But I know that you invite us to look deeper. Could you explain voice beyond speaking or storytelling?
Voice and identity are conjoined in many, many ways. Today, as we move away from an oral tradition into a very visual world, lots of imagery saturates our world. And we kind of read things out of context. And within that, the reality and vantage points of people get submerged within a visual culture that in some ways is emancipatory. It's enabling people to share through a visual screen, but it also can be in some ways disempowering because your stories are somehow reinterpreted through a visual economy. Voice in some ways allows you to process your thoughts differently. And within a very screen-based classroom economy, sometimes certain voices prevail and dominate. And that includes knowledge trajectories where certain forms of knowledge formation dominate and saturate our consciousness. The ways in which we were looking at voice was to also look at voices that are silenced, that are marginalized, and feel that they may not be empowered to hold an equal status in a classroom, public sphere, or other kinds of platforms, which is why we wanted to channel it back to the voice. It doesn't matter how you sound, but we wanted to assure students that it's okay to unleash your voice, have a presence and a say, even in difficult theoretical discussions, that it's really important for them to understand where they stand in some of their points of view, how they're processing knowledge. And often we have very difficult conversations in the classroom, and we think that, some topics can be dichotomized into black and white, when really there are so many other dimensions that the students come and tell you about. They open up discussions and you get educated in the process. And this is why voice is important, because even if we are talking about confidence and networks and finding a job in the big, brutal workplace, we are still asking students to come to terms with who they are, to appreciate and understand their own identity, and to contribute in ways which are really meaningful because they are not denying their sense of self. And this is why I feel, and I think we both agree, that voice was really important in the classroom.
Fantastic, Professor Ibrahim. Your ideas and your knowledge is always very, very encouraging. And you just shared some pearls of wisdom, actually. I can understand that in regards to voice, but you finished in this classroom. So let's get into the classroom again. So students are encouraged to speak, and we do that. Particularly, we did it in our classroom. But yet, that only certain voices, sometimes we can see that they are welcomed, recognized, or legitimized. So may I just ask you a supplementary question around here? Perhaps you have touched upon a bit on the question that I'm going to ask you. But what is the difference between unleashing the voice and simply allowing it?
Unleashing the voice is also coming to terms with the self, as I said. And that means you can put forward your opinions without the fear of others judging you in a classroom all the time. A lot of the engagement that we elicit in the classroom is about trust and feeling comfortable with the classroom and yourself. And often we think, students are not engaging. They're coming in and all I hear is silence. What is it that would break the silence? But that is the kind of work that we are involved in. When students make the transition from secondary education into tertiary education, there is a need to sometimes let go of what they have learned and unlearn certain things and to be in a classroom in a different way. And that means coming to be familiar with people from different walks of life, people who haven't journeyed with you in the secondary school environment. And one of the things we ask is that they get that familiarity and start enjoying the classroom in a different way. But that doesn't happen overnight. It takes a lot of work on both sides, both the students and the educator. And the ways in which we do that is to make students feel that they are people who hold an equal status in the classroom, have a sense of identity, which I talked about. But also, more importantly, how do we engender trust for people to feel comfortable to say, this is what I perceive of this theory or this case scenario or the ways in which I'm seeing the world. And I think that's the difference between just getting people to speak, but also engage meaningfully. And I remember an exercise we used to do in the classroom. And this was when I first started teaching social media to our students. When I came into the business school, we didn't have courses like that. And I would give them all a piece of paper and say, can you draw me a place or a space where there are no CCTVs or where you feel you haven't been watched, and they would start drawing diagrams where they would picture themselves where they are not surveilled or where their identity wasn't requested. And problem solving collectively like that and trying to draw diagrams as a group. And you see these little things emerge in terms of people, sharing an idea, laughing over a sentiment, things that, would challenge them differently. Yet they are talking about a really serious topic on surveillance, privacy, spaces that are free of, digital technologies. Today, the home is set up to surveil you in different ways. Some people might call it a sort of a bio audit of your activities, your toothbrush, your refrigerator, your devices that you use in your everyday life. They clock you in different ways. And when students start to come together and start looking at diagrams or visual communication of whether you can exist without this sort of auditing of the self, it just does become challenging. And something that is quite a serious topic becomes relatable at an intimate level, whether it's domestic or whether it's in terms of your corporeality. So, yeah, I think that's really important in terms of getting that familiarity.
Yeah, okay. So thank you very much. That's a lot you have covered, actually. So sometimes we say that, well, that many people often they bring some case study from, say, maybe China, India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, or different part of the world, and they think that that's kind of the inclusive teaching or inclusive classroom. But what we have discussed, actually, we understand that it's inclusive classroom is much more than that. We have to get each student into the realm of a protagonist. So they have an agency, they have a desire, they have identity, and they are constantly chasing this thing. And as they are chasing, they are also not only bringing their worldview into the classroom, but they are also learning from others' worldview. But sometimes you see that there are some group of students, they often, they struggle. So can you explain that how voice helps people to heal from marginalization, from silence, or from inner fragmentation? I mean, you covered a lot about, in your conversation, but maybe particularly focus on this uh, aspect that I've just asked you.
For somebody going into a really large classroom, and I used to take large classrooms, we're talking about over 200. And I think one of the challenges is making sure that everybody feels that they're part of the classroom. Then that can happen in smaller settings, but when you have a large classroom to deal with, you're always looking over, you're always walking amidst the students. You're asking small questions. You ask them how their day has been. And a lot can happen in those interactions. And I remember where we are in terms of Queen Mary University, we are also serving a community, different communities, marginalized communities, communities where graduates are first-time graduates and their families. Lots of them have caring duties. And sometimes when they are juggling so much in terms of financial pressures, working in the classroom, trying to meet deadlines, holding down a part-time job, they forget that they have a sense of self. When they come into the classroom, they are quiet. They're looking down into their paper. They want to get on with, progress of their studies. They're really good students, but they become invisible in the whole process and the ecology of trying to survive. It's not alien to me because I've been in that scenario before. I've walked that path and I know what it is to juggle that kind of pressures on you as a student, to survive on a really lean budget and to not be hungry all the time. And I remember in classrooms, the kids who are really quiet, looking at their paper, not looking up. It's not because they don't know the topic, and eliciting some sort of engagement sometimes isn't about asking the big questions directly at them, but in different ways in which you engage them. And I've had responses where I've asked questions of, young women looking down, not wanting to look up, not sure that they're even visible in a small office, and then suddenly looking up and saying, Professor, is it me you're addressing? And I go, yes, I'm just interested. What do you do after your studies? Where do you go? And that question seemed to completely unsettle her because there wasn't a sense of a third space. There was work and there was a home that she needed to go back to in terms of the set responsibilities. She couldn't hang out in the library at night because she had a curfew. And then, looking up and just wanting to say something to me that was sociably acceptable, but at the same time, not having something to narrate to me. Events unfold after that because you start to get students an insight into them. You understand their vantage point. You have walked in their shoes before. And so that familiarity builds over time as well. There are lots of instances where students might stand up to do a presentation and suddenly they can't speak or they start stuttering. And there are many techniques to get them over that, but we do that in terms of disarming the classroom, in which we accept that sometimes we pause, that's fine. Sometimes we may not be able to find the words. And that's the kind of environment all educators can create in the classroom as well, I feel.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, that's a lot. Yeah, I can see some of the things that you have just mentioned in my classroom. So something coming to my mind is that there is a quite tension between academic language and lived experience. Can you please explain how does storytelling, we are going back again to storytelling, can help bridge this gap without losing intellectual rigor?
Storytelling, and I think I'll take it out of the academic for a while, but what I would say is that storytelling is a particular kind of format in the sense that some people might say it must have a specific format to be a story. But in reality, there are many versions and many ways to tell a story. If you look at Saidiya Hartman's critical fabulations, she conjoins historical archives with the fictional in terms of unleashing the possibilities of untold history. If you look at gonzo journalism, you have the fact of journalistic writing conjoined with first-person narrative of somebody inserting themselves into it. So storytelling takes a lot of kind of formats, if you wish. And even within academic writing, that's accepted as long as you are manifest with your genre of writing. And so storytelling gives you that possibility. But within oral traditions, where storytelling has got many different kinds of functions, including the ideological, mythologies, which kind of tell you what to think about as a collective, in terms, like I said, in terms of nation building or in terms of communities seeking to own appropriate spaces and belong, they've been very functional, they've been very instrumental throughout history. But one of the things about storytelling, and this is from my experience working in the courts, it's my experience of working as a union, caseworker, is that sometimes three or four people can narrate the same incident, but they can say it differently. And you can appreciate how storytelling is amenable to the voice that has appropriated the story. The vantage point will always shift. And maybe the thing to remember about storytelling is not only about who is telling the story, but how you are listening to the story. In the courts, when we hear testimonies, we are really looking for the consistency in the narrative, where we want to see where the story is broken when somebody says it again, or the kind of aberrance that can happen in a progressive structure of a story. But there's no right or wrong. When we set out parables in fairy tales for children, we are trying to encode all the moral, ethical learnings from a story that a child could imbibe in her or his kind of maturity level. And looking back, those stories that are told as a child, and you think, oh, if I read that as an adult, I would read that story really differently. I would read about stranger anxiety. In magic, there is this whole notion of transformation of people and ideas. And so the things that you read at different points in your life become reinterpreted in storytelling. In academic writing, there are different conventions, but there is also scope to tell stories. And today, when we do anthropological work, when we do social science reviews, we are looking at stories, we are looking at vantage points, particularly with post-colonial writing and critical work, the kind of stories that were not told, that were silenced through time. And I remember this one particular event in post-war Malaya of the Batangkali. It's called the Batangkali incident. And it's quite a controversial event in the sense that, it involved the murder of Chinese men and their families during post-war Malaya. And the witnesses to that event were children. And because they were the witness and they were children at that point in time, this particular incident gets taken to court and gets played out over time. And one of the contentions is a very complex case history, but one of the contentions of that particular event is that the witnesses were children, and hence would that be adducible? Can you adduce that in court? And so you can imagine storytelling can get contentious depending on who is narrating and whether we are, by listening to a story, become second-hand witnesses. And this has been a big element of storytelling as well. What are we witnessing in the narrative as well?
Wow, I would say that that's not just books of knowledge you are bringing into this discussion, but the library of knowledge that you have brought about storytelling. You discussed many things, actually, covered a lot, but you also mentioned about voice and a story side by side. And so we know that voice is not only spoken, it is also embodied. It is lived in breath, pause, silence, hesitation. That these are the things that were also part of your discussion. So I would like you to a bit go further and to explain what changes when we listen to stories through presence and sensation rather than just words alone.
Today, I think one of the things that we struggle with in the classroom is, can the attention span of the students take on quite long lectures and speech and talking? Because one of the things we've lost in a sort of an image-laden world is the ability to sit and listen to ideas, to be stimulated by speech. I remember the kind of excitement listening to lectures of, lots and lots of prominent speeches and what have you, and I would make time to go and listen to them. But that kind of excitement, have our students lost the excitement to sit in the classroom and listen to ideas, lectures, long speeches? And this is partly because of the ways in which, technology, screen cultures have mediated our sense of, reality, have scrambled our attention. And today, attention economy is really a big thing, isn't it? So
Right.
voice, if we can actually socialize, re-socialize our students into appreciating, listening to voice, listening to, things in the classroom and beyond the classroom, I think that's really important. In some ways, if you think about it, we had a different way of managing certain things. We were very adept at listening. We had more radio transmission in our time. And that's now, even radio now has visual elements today. So I think voice has a very special role because even within the spectrum of broadcasting technologies, a lot of people will tell you that radio played a really special role in their lives because it came in, sat with them in their solitude. They could listen to different things. It kept them company. Voice has that special power as well, not just with media artifacts. The ways in which speeches can move you, when you want to relate to a sense of community and belonging, voice has that power. And when you feel that the experiences that you go through, perhaps as a person of color or a marginalized community, thinking that it's exceptional to you may make you feel alienated and feel like you are lost in the world. But listening to voices that have sort of embodied the same experiences enables you to connect differently. And voice has that power, I think, to transcend sometimes the visual disruptions that other media artifacts can produce. And I think reading has that, words have that, a voice has a special place as well. And this is why I think even when you have voice simulation, lots of different technologies being sneaked into the classroom, engagement today, I think, is still centered around the voice. And that's why it's important.
That's fantastic, Professor Ibrahim. So you covered a lot of grounds there, actually. Probably I will come to the responsibility of institution in this regard. But let me just, for our audience, share one kind of ideas that we did while we were coming up with this initiative of storytelling unboxed. We actually blurred the boundaries between the classroom and the lives, because sometimes classroom might be viewed as a bit more formal, and some voices or some students might be hesitant in bringing up their voices into that atmosphere. So we blurred the boundary using the mythical and magical power of storytelling, created a third space, not like, a Starbucks, but it's a kind of different kind of third space where the students can come together, share their ideas in a comfortable environment with their peers, have conversation even with the industry practitioners and the community members. But one thing is very important is that without any fear of judgment. So, and that really worked very, very well. But we can see that still students from diverse cultural and social backgrounds and often getting everybody into the same realm of conversation or same realm of just bringing their voice out, it might be a bit risky. And often academics we tend to use those voices which are a bit louder than the others. And that might feel very, very risky. So in this context, Professor Ibrahim, how do you believe or think that institutions carry some responsibilities in creating spaces where voices feel safe and not exposed?
I think one of the things that we as educators have to constantly remind ourselves is we are not, we are not the oracles of knowledge alone. We are often educated by others, and students are really an important aspect of that. You learn a lot through that environment. Setting something up as totally formal is also intimidating in a classroom. And one of the things that we want to assure all the time when we did teaching together was to say that everyone's point of view matters. We really want to hear this out, particularly in terms of ethical discourses, because the normative notion of ethical can shift. in terms of the cultural landscape, legal landscape, in terms of jurisdiction. And so no one is the purveyor of knowledge per se. And so that formality gets broken when we say, we recognize your point of view, and your point of view is accepted. And that's the kind of learning we do as educators, because we've got to sometimes challenge our own discriminations, our sense of bias, our stereotypes that we bring, and we all have them. We all have them, and we have got to constantly challenge them. When we're talking about tough topics, child labor in depraved economies, and, when we suspend our judgment and we listen, we do get educated in different ways, and that's an important dimension. And the ways in which people's individual experiences and vantage points come to bear is through sometimes the narrative art of storytelling as well. When people relate their sense of experiences or their challenges, you are you are able to walk in their pathway and understand, what happened to somebody. One of the things I learned, I went into looking at what it is to be a moderator between people, because I went and did a professional course on that. And one of the things they tell you is that you've got to be able to walk in people's footsteps as well, to relate to them, to be empathetic to their situations. And this is one of the things that can easily be applied in the classroom as well.
So the role of emotional intelligence, understanding yourself, but also understanding others, and that makes a very big difference. So let's come to in a kind of another question where we look at presence and performance. So you often say that presence matter more than performance, and this is also resonated in your today's voice while you are having conversation with me. So could you explain for our audience why authenticity is more powerful than performance in storytelling?
Probably a question you would answer much better in terms of your storytelling format, Moin, to be honest. For me, presence transcends performance, because performance is about getting the attention and validation from others. Presence is the ability to seek that without setting that as the agenda, but centering yourself and your points of view and expressing that to an audience or a collective. And I think that's important. One of the things about today's economy is this whole attention. Everything wants to grab your attention. Devices want to grab your attention. Advertising wants to grab your attention. And with all that noise and interruption and disruption, how do you still hold on to a sense of presence? Whether it's in a, noisy classroom, whether it's about the ability to motivate others or influence ideas. It's not in terms of emulating the popular. Sometimes it's veering away from the popular and holding your own. And sometimes it's the ability to critique things that you think are the most acceptable points of view, despite the criticism you yourself might get for challenging a statement or a position. And that kind of confidence comes with time in the classroom, because, hearing your own voice is really important for the students. Coming to terms with it is just as important. Owning it and then expressing it without fear. And those are kind of the stages in terms of transcending into a space of identity and acceptance in the classroom. And that happens over time. And I think we are both privileged that we can do that work with students.
Fantastic. Since you have said that I can also add something to this discussion regarding storytelling, authenticity, and voice. Maybe I will make an endeavor, but I know that while discussing with you, I am nowhere. But what we particularly did together in Storytelling Unboxed is that we believed in one principle that all the students or every student is unique. And that is so authentic thing because like our fingerprint, every student is also unique. Their fingerprint is unique. Their story is also unique. And believing in this thing makes a paradigm shift the way we approach a student and teach them to unleash their voice or to unleash their potential. Because when we consider that every student is unique, we make them a character. So character is a protagonist, and they have a desire, and they go through challenges. And when they go through challenges, they have setback, but then they bounce back. And that is what is the way they transform themselves. So we negate to accept that students are commodity. So they are unique, not equal. And that is a reflection of their authentic self. But again, when we define storytelling, we say that a story is a reflection of life. Because a story is not just for entertainment, but a story has to give some enlightenment to us so that we can make our life better. That's why the concept of genre comes sometime. So different genre has got different life philosophy. Like, say, for example, fantasy. It's about finding magic within us and within the world. So when you are in a new environment, you tend to try because you don't have any fear that your known ones will be judging you. And when you are trying in a new environment, you are more likely to get magic inside you and in the environment. But again, say when you think about, say, horror has got a life philosophy that, is more connected with religion. Like, say, we are not only fighting the monster in the society, and sometimes fighting the monster in the society is easy, and we often win in this fight. But then we become the monster. We need to stand in front of mirror, and very few people can do that because then we have to start fighting the monster inside us, which is transcended genre. And sometimes we know that if in this fight we might die because monster is very, very powerful, but that is the way and that is the path to the promised land, and that is the way we extend the meaning of death and thinking that we are going to the promised land. So here, what is important is that when we look at the character, we don't like the likable character. We like the character who are like us, who has got the struggles, who has got the weakness, and who has got challenges. And the story shows that how the character overcome these challenges and leave message to us. And that's why authentic stories are powerful. It's not about just performance, because this authentic story is the reflection of our life. And by taking lesson from authentic story, we can make our life better. But I would ask you a question, Professor Ibrahim, that is, so I think this is probably very much an area where you are a mover and shaker. So in a world shaped by AI, speed and constant output, do you believe human voice and presence matter more than ever?
I think more than ever, you're right, it does matter. But I wanted to come back to the idea of the authentic and inauthentic today being, so many simulated things around us that we need to constantly identify whether it's human or otherwise. That's kind of the challenge for the next decade or so that we will be sort of, be encountering. But one of the things about sharing economies today, where people put out stories of themselves, share anecdotes of their banal lives, moments that may not have what you said in terms of plot and narrative and messaging, the open-ended sharing that we do has got a different social sort of consequence and meaning for us as human beings in a collective. And the emphasis sometimes shifts away from just the messaging to the act of sharing, to the act of presence in sort of telling the world, I'm doing this. It might not mean much to you, but I'm, claiming my presence in the world. A lot of the platforms today encourage people to put out content, to create content, to fill platforms with something that can be circulated ad nauseum. And so storytelling in its sort of, original emphasis of plot, narrative, antagonist, protagonist, having some sort of message encoded, parables moved on to open-ended human transactions of sharing. And this sharing has got a different level of meaning to individuals, communities, people who are involved in that transaction in their daily lives. And it's not easy to trivialize it because it's a very important part of who we are today. And it comes back to this notion of presence today, because presence today on social media takes on different manifestations, including voice. Like everything today with AI, it can be reappropriated and conjoined to a simulated platforms of voice and image, where we are constantly struggling to identify the human. But as I've always said in my books, the human prevails in form and spirit. And that's why I think we need to still valorize human voice.
Oh, fantastic, actually. I need to read that book, actually, because I think I read a couple of other books written by you, but not this one. And I'm looking forward to reading this book, definitely. I think we are very end of our today's episode, but I have one more question for you, Professor Ibrahim, if that is not a problem, as far as your time is concerned. So it's about identity, narrative, and belonging. And I think it's a very deep question because sort of understanding our identity or understanding, finding our position in this cosmic theater. I'm very moved by, the Shakespeare's all the world is a stage and every man and woman are mere players. So, I mean, these two lines actually help me think that, okay, I have a role and we have a role and we need to find that role into our cosmic theater. And that's what is the way of we can synchronize with the cosmos because we are a node in the cosmos as well. So stories do not merely describe who we are. They quietly shape who we are becoming, how we are finding our role into this cosmic theater. How does storytelling help people negotiate or renegotiate identity, especially in a space where they have felt unseen, unheard, or maybe unnoticed within this vast amount of noises in the environment where we are living?
I think that's a very big and broad question. And I think if you look at the diasporic mind, where your parents have lived in different places and they are constantly talking about the nostalgia of the homeland, the stories of the homeland are concocted every day in terms of your daily consumerism products that come into the household. And people don't just have one identity, they have multiple identities as we move and shape our lives through different encounters. We appropriate different roles. And multiple identities are important as well because they speak to different aspects of you. And I think like a lot of people who are diasporic, I do have a diasporic mindset where you are dispossessed, but you belong to new spaces all the time. And that's an important dimension of adaptation of humanity over time. My parents spoke a lot about their homeland, and homeland stories saturated the household in many, many different ways. And yet, when you went to the spaces where they were, where they belonged, it had different meanings for all of us, having never seen their homelands. And my sense of the homeland is different from my children's sense of the homeland because we've moved through time, different generations. And so those sense of identity, belonging, memory, they are things that are amenable to fluid changes. It changes you differently when you land in different spaces, when you feel dispossessed, but yet belonging to spaces where you are working and contributing. And I think that is a very central aspect of a diasporic reality. And I wonder, Dr. Moyne, if you feel like that as well.
Yeah, I feel that as well. And as you said, that my understanding of the homeland story is also kind of different from my children
Yes.
because they have not spent that amount of time there, and I was particularly in the Navy, so I have a different kind of reflection connection. Yeah. So I think, thank you very much for your time, Professor Yasmin Ibrahim. I think we are going to conclude. I would just say a few words and conclude this episode.
Before you do that, Dr. Moyne, I just wanted to thank you for the time and running through some of those interesting questions you presented. It has been an enormous privilege working in the classroom with you and doing this initiative, Storytelling Unboxed, with you as well. So thank you for being a great colleague.
Thank you very much. Pleasure is mine, Professor Yasmin Ibrahim. And I know that I have transformed a lot getting the opportunity to work with you because you are a tremendous leader who not only see it's not how to get result, but how to also develop people. That's very important. You are giving your best to develop succession leadership.
For me, Dr. Moyne.
No, that's fine. I have actually, I mean, if I even see how we have grown after coming to this university and how I have learned from you. So yeah, I just want to say that voice is not something we give to people. It is something we remember together. As we come to a close, Storytelling Unboxed reminds us that storytelling is not about being louder. It's about being present. It's about recognizing that every voice carries a history, a wound, and a possibility. When voice is honored, learning transforms. Classrooms become communities, stories become bridges, and people move slowly, courageously, from silence to agency. Professor Yasmin Ibrahim, thank you for reminding us the power of voice, identity, our agency, and moreover, the power of our stories. And the stories are not only heard, it is felt, embodied, and relational. And to everyone listening, we hope to leave you with not only be inspired to speak, but also committed to listening to the stories unfolding around you and the quiet ones waiting within. From London, me, Dr. S.M. Moin, and Professor Yasmin Ibrahim, wishing you all the best. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.